Hello and welcome to the interesting video. Being an airgun enthusiast, I've made this video to show various airgunners different aspects over the years and how they was tested in the 50s and 60s, with the Strawboard test explaining that a Webley Mark III would shoot through say 16 strawboards and the Webley Hawk would shoot through 14 or 12, etc. I will explain these to you later when we're doing the actual testing. Now let's look at workshop tips. This is an HW77 piston washer that's been burnt out. This is caused by it leaking slightly and gradually eroding the washer, as you can see on the top there. Once they start leaking, they will just get worse till it leaks real bad like this one did. The hot high-speed gases seems to cut away the plastic once they start to leak, like plasma cutting. Now the small bit. We're doing this test because I've often been asked, how far does it go? So we've got a 12 foot-pound wire arc just to see how far it will actually go. We've got a rangefinder with us to find the extreme range. We're now going to use the wire arc HW50, which is the same as a 99. But with a slightly different trigger. Still got a good trigger, but it's non-adjustable. That was just in front of me. This is how far it is, up 305 yards, as you can see. We're having to use walkie-talkies to speak to each other, and using the rangefinder, he's holding the board up so I can get a more positive distance fix. This is 289 yards, and this is about the extreme range. It's hitting the water with a slight plop, but could still do some damage, I would think, and it could also ricochet off the water and bounce further on a little bit further. But around about 300 yards for a 12 foot-pound airgun. I think this is about the maximum range, so I'll get the rangefinder out and see how far you are. Yeah, that's just over. This is 296 yards.
Okay, I'll fire a few shots with your HW.
Yeah, with the air arms.
Those air arms pellets.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll try them. This is with air arms now. At the same 296 yards. The Magnum again, 263 yards.
Shall we try a few with the H&N match now? I think they might be restricted by a flat profile, mind you, but it's worth a few shots, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll try the H&N match just so we can put it on record what they're doing. Yeah, the H&N are stopping short. I'll walk back a bit more. Right, have a lot shorter. Yeah, the H&M match are falling down at this distance here, which is quite a bit closer. They're dropping more like pebbles, they're losing so much power. This is H&M match. We're now at 100 yards and we're going to try AccuPels. You can tell they've still got quite a lot of impact at 100 yards. This is the range we've been firing at, and it's 400 yards to the end. And the air guns have been going out to like 300 yards from a 12 foot-pound air gun, but this is right on 12. Not as so many 12s which are doing about 8 or 6. Right, the conclusion of the long range test was that Wasp was travelling to a maximum of about 280 yards, whereas the Crossman, AccuPel and the Air Arms was travelling out to about 300. The Bisley Magnums, which people use for long range hunting, was a bit shorter at 263 yards. The H&M match was surprising. They ended up dropping short at 200 yards, and the wind made quite a big difference, you know, to the distance. It would affect it quite a bit. If it was blowing head on or behind, you'd make quite a bit of difference. But the angle of the gun was found that it didn't make a lot of difference. You know, so long as you had the angle reasonable, the pellets will go the same way. You know, so the pellets will go at the same distance. Even if you angled it up even steeper, it just seemed that the pellets would drop and plop in the water more. So the angle wasn't as critical as we would have thought. Now let's look at workshop tips. We're going to discuss removing blockages from a barrel. It's easy if you get a couple of pellets in the barrel to think that I'll just tap them out, but what can happen is as you try and tap them out, you can just lodge them in firmer, which will make it even harder to remove them. The secret is to pull them out, and for that you have to make up a long tool to go right down the barrel and screw into the lead and pull a little bit out at a time. This is the Super 10 with a blocked barrel. I'm going to remove the barrel first so I've got access to both ends. It's preferable to remove the objects from the breech end rather than the muzzle end, because you've got to take great care not to damage the muzzle, which is the critical part when the pellet is fired. We've removed the barrel, and here you can see at the breech end the lead pellets that are all jammed in there, and even on the transfer port you can see just about a dented up pellet that's been jammed in there. The pellets are jammed in back to about here, which is about a magazine full, which is 10 pellets. Here's a screw that we've got. We're going to fix this into a piece of brass. The screw measures 0.165. Just cut it off. Here we've got our screw. Could do with a slightly bit bigger piece of brass. Screwed that into the end. Here you can see it fixed in the end of the brass. The breech end was too blocked to start, so we started at the muzzle. Insert it carefully into the muzzle without touching it with a steel. Keep turning it till it gets a bit of a bite. Give it a pull. Here you can see it's pulled one pellet out. Unscrew it. Try the next time. Next pellet. Missed that one. Next one. You can tell how far down you are by placing the brass rod into the gun, holding your thumbnail there or marking it with a felt pen. Bring it out, put it against the gun, against the barrel, and you can see we're right near the end. Once you've only got one or two pellets in, they might tap out. Like that. If ever you find it don't feed pellets correctly or it's jamming up, don't try forcing it, but remove them first till you get them clear. Otherwise you'll just jam them in like this, well they'll block it up. The more you try and tap them out, the more they will lock up and block the barrel. Here we have some of the pellets taken from the BSA Super 10. This is a Bisley target holder and pellet trap. They come with a thin plate at the back which lasts quite a long time, but we prefer to use these thick ones, which you just pull the old one out like that and slip in a thicker one. This is then useful for seeing how much the pellet is flattened, because when the lid is shut and the target's in the front, the pellets will be trapped in the back here. Here are some of the guns we will be using and testing in this video. Their range, a table to rest on because we're testing the gun, not the tester, and that target down there is a piece of sheet steel 1/8 thick sloping towards us. The range is 25 yards. This is a Sheridan 2.0 caliber pump up rifle. We've got the thick steel plate at the back, and we'll show you what it does to a 2.2 pellet at 12 foot-pound. This will give you an indication at home to see what your gun's doing without a chronograph. Right, we'll now show you the pellet. This is what it does to the pellet at 12 foot-pound, just under. Here we've made up a strawboard test as shown in the old days when we was teenagers. We've used our ball because this is readily available. We're now going to try the 177 original 34 that's doing a high velocity. We'll put the lid on and try that. It's gone through 4, 2, 3, 4. And here's the pellet. Now let's look at workshop tips. This is a Webley Vulcan I've got in for a new spring-on washer and lube up. But I just thought I'd demonstrate on how not to fit a telescopic sight. As you can see, the mounts are really close together. Ideally, you want these as far apart as possible to still keep the scope in the same position that suits your eye. As you can see, this one here could be put there and that one could be put near the back there. That would make it more rigid. That's penetrated only 3 pieces of hardboard. So to get a more accurate reading, we'll have to use something much thinner. You can use the yellow pages to give an idea, which we'll show you. If you don't want to make up your own testing jig, I bought this in IKEA for £4.50. It's a CD rack. All you've got to do is cut the boards out the same size as a CD case, and they will slot in there. When you're doing a yellow pages test, it's important not to open it up till you've finished all the testing. What we're going to do is write down on the yellow pages a little circle and what pellet we're going to shoot into it so we can test afterwards. These are the pellets we're going to test in the yellow pages. This will give you a guide at home if you haven't got a chronograph. First, the Ely Wasp. Now we'll try H&M Match. We're now trying Crossman AccuPel. It's important to have the muzzle perpendicular to the book so it goes in straight, otherwise you'll get a misreading. We'll now open the pages up and see how far they've gone in and what they look like. You can see some there. That's the Wasp. It's the Wasp, isn't it?
H&M Match.
H&M Match blown apart. What was that one? That was the Korean one. What was that one there? That was Crossman Match Pel. Take a few more pages. AccuPel. Bisley Superfield. That was a Sheridan there, wasn't it?
And here's him.
Yeah. Bit bent up, that one. Bisley Magnum, solid head. And that one there was at the Bisley Premier. Crossman Power Pel. This is the 177 by the look of it. 177 Pest Control. It's going pretty fast. You can go through like this to check to see which is the last page that's got the split in it. That was the 177 Crossman AccuPel. There's a Bisley Premier and the Crossman Power Pel have gone into about page 440. The 177 is still going on. Five, 4, 9, 5. This is only a guide. Page 630. 650. Yeah, 650 pages with 177 Crossman Acupel, but that's an FAC one. This is a Mark II air sporter that we've tuned, and with Ely Wasp it's doing 11.999. I'll try it again. Just a touch over that one. 12.04. These Wasp weigh 14.3. $11.999 again. This is good going for an old gun. Now trying a Webley Mark III. This has not been tuned at all in standard. .442 feet per second with Wasp. .456. We can feel that the spring needs replacing on this gun. We'll now try an Edgar Brothers 60 break barrel air rifle.
Using Wasp.
Yeah, we're going to use Ely Wasp in the Edgar Brothers 60 air rifle. This is .22 caliber. .491. These have been detuned for the English market because some of them was over, so they've put a weaker spring in them. This one's probably been overdone a bit. Yeah, it's coming up. This is brand new, it hasn't been running at all. We'll try it with Crossman pellets. We're trying the Edgar Brothers 22 60 model. We've changed the pellets to Crossman now because the Wasp was very tight. That's better, 11 foot-pound. They was 5.6 Ely Wasp. Probably 5.5s would have been better. Obviously needs running in, doesn't it? Just try one more shot. This is the Edgar Brothers 60 model that we're testing. It's a simple break barrel gun, reasonably priced. This is the Sheridan pump up rifle. These are in .20 caliber. They're bolt action and you need about 7 or 8 pumps for full 12 foot-pound. You pull the bolt back first, cock it. This takes the tension off the exhaust valve and then you can pump it just by pulling the fore end out, like that. You can reduce the pumps for shooting indoors if you wish. We're now going to check the Sheridan with the maximum pumps, and we're going to shoot it into this piece of wood and mark down each shot with the amount of pumps that we've gone and the velocity. So we start with the first shot. It's gone right in there, and the velocity is 598.5 feet per second. So we'll write that on our piece of wood. That's with Crossman AccuPels. Write that on the wood. 598.5 and full pumps. We're now doing it with 7 pumps. $577. We're now down to 2 pumps. $364. I would say that's about the minimum amount of pumps, but we'll try it with 1 pump, see if it comes out. Now with 1 pump. $254. We've now pumped the Sheridan to the full amount of pumps of 8 or 9 pumps till the relief valve goes. And we're going to show you how the pellet flattens at that velocity. That's 589 feet per second. We've now given it 7 pumps. $574. We're now trying it with 6 pumps. $556. This is with Crossman AccuPel. It's still blowing them to pieces. Here you can see from left to right, with full power, the pellet has disintegrated completely, and with 7 pumps, even with 6 pumps. But as it goes down to 5 pumps, it starts flattening out, and then 4 pumps, then 3, 2, and 1 pump. Just flattens the nose a little bit. This is the penetration into softwood from the Sheridan in 2.0 calibre. To the left we've got 8 pumps, then 7, 6, 5, 4 and 3, and 2 pumps is on the top, just about stuck in like that, and the 1 pump bounced off like that. Yeah. It's going clean through a full tin of cat food. That's at 12 foot-pound.
Quite impressive.
Yeah. If your gun does that, you want to check it on a chronograph to make sure it's not exceeding 12 foot-pound. Because that's a bit too close for comfort on the chronograph. We're now going to use the Edgar Brothers with Crossman AccuPel, and this is doing 11, don't forget. Yeah. That's not gone through, that's just split the other side. We're now checking the Slavia in 177 with Ely Wasp. We've put the weight in at 7.5 grains. First shot is 3 foot-pounds. Just try another one. This is brand new and not fired any pellets yet. It will pick up as it gets rid of its excess grease and oil. The comparative data sheet, air guns, number of straw balls penetrated, 364 thick, placed ½ inch apart and penetrated at 20 feet. For the Webley Mark III in 2.2, they claimed it would do 16 straw balls. That's at 20 feet. The 177 they give the same, 16 straw balls. The 2.2 Mark III is claimed 500 feet per second, whereas for the 177 they've claimed 600. I suspected this was wrong years ago, but them days no one had a chronograph or even knew what it was. But now I would guess that the Mark III should be nearer 700 and a good one would be around about 800 feet per second, which is still well below the 12 foot-pounds UK limit. I used to find generally that the Mark II air sporters and the Mark Is would generally have the edge on power over a Webley Mark III, even though the Mark IIIs would generally have a better tap that didn't leak so bad. The air sporters, although they had a tapered tap, would leak a little bit, but this would not affect the power so long as it wasn't too excessive. They gave the junior air pistol 7 straw balls at 20 feet and a velocity of 290 feet per second. The Premier air pistol, because this is quite a late, probably the last general information leaflet they ever did, on the Premier they give the 2.2 11 straw balls at 310 feet per second, and the 177 Premier 10 straw balls 350 feet per second. We found that you can get this card from any good art shop. This measures 77 thou, and this seems to represent the old system of straw balls what was used years ago in the 50s and 60s. Here we've got our Bisley trap with the thicker plate to go at the end just in case it goes through the lot. This is just a safety precaution because it could possibly go through the lot. As we're testing a new medium, we've got to be on the safe side. So with the lid shut, that will trap any pellet that would exceed the end. We'll light it up so that you've got more visibility to see what's happening. Right, we've checked the gun, so we're now going to use Ely Wasp in the HW50, which we know is doing 12 foot-pounds. We'll try it in the middle for the first shot. Got to hold the gun exactly horizontal to the trap. And that has gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Here I found a box of Sabo pellets. These was 2-part. You put the plastic piece here into a little pen dispenser with the lead, copper coated lead pellet inside. And these travelled quite a long way because they was more ballistically efficient. We'll just repeat that test again, and I'll be firing nearest to the camera. Again holding it perpendicular to the trap. It's gone through exactly the same amount and is in the bottom of the trap there. You just see the 2 pellets in the bottom there. This is Tilbury and East Linford Field Target Club. There's quite a few members here today, and we'll show you the plinking range first. This is all that's left from the high velocity 177 Crossman pellets, doing 970 feet per second, hitting the steel plate. If you're new to pre-charge air guns, then this might be of interest to you. I get some customers get a bit mixed up with pressure and volume, and some people have bought a very small pressure bottle, which is small in size and pressure, which is of no use. You need to buy as big a bottle as you can buy with the highest pressure. Say for instance your gun takes 3000 psi. With this bottle at 207 bar, 3042 psi, you'd only probably be able to fill a gun up once, because you use about 50 psi per fill, say. With this one, you could fill the same gun up at 3000 psi 8 or 9 times. With this bottle, you'd be able to fill the same gun up 28 times if you're using 50 psi per charge to fill the gun. If you're using 50 psi to fill the gun each time. But with this higher pressure, it would probably work out much better than that, because you've got such a lot over the top. If you do buy a 300 bar one, it's best to buy it from the diving shop where you're going to get it filled up. There's no point in buying a 300 bar bottle if the shop can only fill it up to 232. A big 12 litre one of these costs about £190 or £200, and it's best to buy the bottle from the diving shop where you're going to get it filled up. Some diving shops have been known to charge double price for air gunners because they're not divers and they haven't bought a bottle from them. When shooting into the traps, make sure you're wearing protective glasses and any other protective equipment you may require, because lead can splash out from the traps, and they could, if you're fairly close, they could cause you an injury. We're now using the Edgar Brothers 30 model in 177 with Crossman Acupel at 7.9 grains. This also is brand new and hasn't fired any pellets yet. .53 foot-pounds. It's pretty good for first shot, isn't it? Here we have a spring piston air gun. These are very simple, they work just like a bicycle pump with a spring inside the piston, compressed when the gun is cocked. When you pull the trigger, it just allows this piston and the washer at the front that seals it to fly forward, compressing this volume of air that's in here. It can then only get out through the transfer port, which will fire the pellet down the barrel. This is the breech seal that would seal it so it doesn't leak. This gun I've drawn has got a very short transfer port, which is better than having a long one, which it could be back here. And then it means that if it was back here, you would have a lot of lost volume in it. The larger the transfer port and the longer it is, the more lost volume there is in here. This affects the power quite dramatically if it's quite long. In fact, if you was to stop some of the pistons back here 1/8 of an inch short, you'd probably find that the pellet wouldn't even come out the barrel. Now let's look at workshop tips. This is an original Diana or RWS 5248 model cylinder. The lever goes in here that pulls it back to cock the gun. I've cut one in half to show you what it's like inside and to show you the short transfer port it's got. Here you can see the small transfer port and tapered, and it's quite short. The breech seal goes there, and here you can see the transfer port is quite short with a lead into it. I'll show you the piston without a washer on, and here you can see that the piston would come back from there, and when the gun is fired it would fly forward with the washer on the front there, compressing the air. The air will heat up and expand even more, which will make it even more efficient. With pump up air rifles you're doing it in reverse, so when you fire a pump up the air comes out but cools down, so you actually lose pressure. That's why a pump up is not as efficient as a spring. Okay, we're now going to aim at the cartridge case. These are the wasp pellets that we're using. These are 5.6mm. You can get 5.5 wasp, but for all these tests we are using 5.6. So make sure that it's 5.6 that you're using if you're doing a similar test. German guns tend to like 5.5s. Right, I've emptied the trap. We now try a Webley Mark III in 2.2 with wasp. 5, 6, 7. Five, 7, 4. 5, 7, 5. Now I'll show you what the wasp pellet looks like at 575 feet per second. If your gun does that at the muzzle, then it's doing about 575 feet per second. But it must be wasp pellets, because different pellets can give you a false reading. Webley used to claim 500 feet per second for a 2.2 Webley Mark III. This is a funnel trap that we've had in the workshop, and as you can see it's been bashed quite a bit and shot at slightly different angles, but as you can see it's eventually it's come through and the sides split open at the back, which is why I prefer the Bisley ones, that we can just slide the thicker sheet of steel out and replace it with a nice thick one. For those of you that are new to air guns, or telescopic sights even, I thought I would just explain what 4x40 means. It means it magnifies your subject 4 times when you're looking through the scope, and the 40 means the front lens is 40mm from there to there. This is the front. A 3 to 9x40 means it can magnify it between 3 times and 9 times. This is a Bisley Magnum, again still in the Mark II Air Sporter. For 79 feet per second. We'll just change it to the correct weight. They are 21 grains. Just see what the energy is. .8. Just try one more. Bisley Magnum, 21 grains. We've now got Superfield, again in the Mark II Air Sporter. The energy's reading 16.5 because we've still got it at 21 grains. We'll change it back. To 14.7. See what that comes out at. We'll now try the Korean pellets in 2.2 Mark II Air Sporter. I'm told these go very well in HW80s, but not in an Air Sporter by the look of it. I think the weight of these is 14.3, so it's not far out. We'll now try Wasp again. the weight. Weight's reading a bit high. We'll lower it down to 14.2. 11.3. The gas ram systems, instead of using a metal spring, all they do is use compressed gas or air in the sealed unit here. So when you cock a gas ram gun, all you're doing is compressing it even more, and when you fire the gun, the piston would then be pushed forward, allowing the compressed air to go back to its original pressure. For example, say it's 1000 psi behind it, you could cock the gun and make it go to 2500, then when the piston flies forward it would be back down to 1000 psi again. In theory, the compressed air in here should not leak out, but I've found quite a lot that do over time. Telescopic sights. For those of you that don't know what an image moving scope is, or telescopic sight, we call them scopes for short. An image moving scope means that the crosshairs always remain in the centre, no matter where you adjust it, because you've got a false tube inside the scope that moves and keeps this central. In a non-image moving scope, after adjustments exaggerated, you could find the crosshairs over to one side and down a bit, depending on the gun. Luckily, most scopes that you buy now are of the image moving type.
Well done.
For doing rats of a night, I've modified an HW50. I don't like hoods on air rifles because it tends to cut down the light that reaches the blade at the front. So what I tend to do is take the hood off, which I've done to this 50. You can see that I've made up an adapter at the front there for a Logan light. This I find works really good because I can still see the sight at the back and the front, and I've actually made it shiny at the front there of aluminium to make it reflect back, to make it show up in the dark. This works quite well because I find that a scope shooting rats, a lot of the time they're too close to use a scope, so you can't beat open sights. I'll show you a close-up of this front sight because I've actually had to cut the hood off. This is what the front sight looks like before you cut it off. This is a standard front sight with the hood built in. But you can cut this part off if you want to. Here is the front sight close up. You can see I fold it down after cutting the hood off. The hoods on these do not come off on the 50s and 99s, they're actually made in one piece. So I had to cut it off and file it down. I'll turn it round to show you the back. There, looking at the back of the front sight, you can see it's all silver. This shows up well of a night with the Logan lamp. Most telescopic sights conform to this idea, except the odd few that have got an inch tube but still give you a large field of view. Telescopic sights, when I talk of field of view, I thought I would just explain what field of view is for those that don't know what field of view means. The field of view is the amount of area that you can see through the telescopic sight. For instance, if you had a 4x15 as a rough guide, your field of view would be very tiny. But if you went to a 4x40, your field of view, you'd see that much more of the tree. And if you had a 50mm, you would see that much of the tree. This is just as a guide to give you an idea of what we mean by field of view. When you hear mention of a wide angle scope, what that means is the scope is extended to give a larger field of view, like a TV screen like this. This is a good wide angle picture, but with cheaper scopes they call them wide angle, but all they're actually doing is chopping off the top and bottom of your actual tube that you'd see anyway, so you're not actually getting a wider angle. And with the cheaper scopes you'd actually get a smaller field of view, because they're actually cutting the top, the bottom and the sides off to give you a TV. This is not to scale, but you can see I've drawn a line. If you imagine the pressure to this mark, you'll get this much out of it, one feel, 50 psi, and on a 232 bar you'd get 8 fills, about that much, and on a 300 bar you get a lot more fills from it, because every time you decant from this bottle into the gun, or any of these bottles, the pressure will drop accordingly. The higher the pressure of the gun, the more pressure you're going to use from each bottle. To convert bar to PSI, you multiply it by 14.7, and that will give you the PSI, pounds per square inch. Some people think that the much higher magnification is better, but the higher the magnification for a given object lens at the front, you will get less field of view the higher the magnification is. Also, the higher magnification, say it was 20 times, it magnifies your wobble 20 times. The same as a 4x40 would magnify your wobble 4 times, but because it's a smaller magnification it doesn't show so much. I'm going to try a soft air gun now. This is a Marui hop-up, just to see if it measures the velocity of a soft pellet. It does 168 feet per second. Here we have a diagrammatic view of a pre-charged rifle, or pistol come to that. When you fill it up from your diving bottle, which is connected to the front, there's a non-return valve here which don't let the air out. Once you've put, say, 2000 psi in here, the air's trying to come out here and it's trying to come out there, but this would seal against the lip. The barrel is on the top here, and you can see the transfer port there and there. There would normally be a small brass piece in between with an O-ring each end, top and bottom, in there to allow the air to fly up behind the pellet, which would be in there. When you fire the gun, first of all you pull the hammer back, which cocks the spring and pulls the hammer back so it engages in the trigger. When you pull the trigger, the hammer flies forward and taps the end of the valve there, which we've shown there. This knocks the valve off the seat and allows a short blast of air to come out and up the transfer port behind the pellet and thereby firing it out. As you can imagine, inside the pre-charged gun there's quite a few bulky bits like the inlet valve at the front and the exhaust valve at the back. With a carbine you've got a lot less volume inside, and you've also got a shorter barrel. So a shorter barrel, you need a little bit more air to get the same velocity, so you're losing power by that, and you're also getting a shorter reservoir, which when you take into consideration all the internals that are filling it up, you've not got a lot of volume inside, which is why I don't like pre-charged carbines. The bolt pushes the pellet forward past the transfer port and seals behind the transfer port, allowing the air pressure to drive the pellet out the barrel. We slip the paper clips on a bit of string and then tie a knot there to hold them in position, and then later on we'll clip on some terrier marks for a little shoot up. We'll now try a close up of how the terrier marks go when they're hit. Now here you can see the distance we're shooting from. We've come forward at 20 yards now. The terrier marks you can get in all different shapes and sizes. When testing the scope, make sure you're nice and comfortable, because you're testing the equipment and not the shooter. This is the Logan lamp. These are quite reasonably priced, and you get the battery and the battery charger and the lamp to clip onto the scope. It has a quick detachable clamp, which is quite convenient if ever you want to take it off. This is the battery. And this is the charger. And this is the lead that connects the battery to the lamp. Put it down there. Start by unscrewing the adjuster on the bottom and then see how it fits on the scope. Just lower it down. That's it. Make sure the lamp is upright by unclamping, holding the gun upright, clipping it upright and then locking it down. Then all you have to do is fit the lead which just plugs onto the left hand side like that. The switch can be velcroed in a convenient position, and this end plugs into the battery pack. This will be handy for shooting rabbits at night if you're doing pest control. This is a diagram of a pump-up rifle. Here we have the pump with the washer seal at the front there. When you pull the pump arm out, this piston will be pulled back to here, and then you pull the lever forward, closing it would push it forward again to there. You need this washer, if you've got a pump, you need that to be set so it's touching this face. If there's any gap there, like this one, that would make it very inefficient. So you'd need loads of pumps, but you won't get much more power out of it. because what would happen is, here is the non-return valve inside the reservoir there. When the pressure is the same this side as that side, you won't be able to put no more pressure in there because it will be equal. But assuming you've got this going close to this face as possible, you'll pump it and build up the pressure in this reservoir, which on a pump up is fairly small, so small that they can use one spring sometimes that holds the exhaust valve shut and the inlet valve shut. The hammer strikes the valve and lets the blast of air out of the reservoir up the transfer port and fire in the pellet. A single stroke pneumatic works by the piston coming all the way down, compressing the air, and when you fire it, you just let the valve open and let all the air come out. When you fire in a single stroke pneumatic, each time you pull the arm out, there's no non-return valve. On a single stroke pneumatic, you pull the pump arm out and you push it back, compressing the air in this reservoir. Obviously the layout would be slightly different because you wouldn't have this, and there's various means of valves that they use. Some just blow open and re-shut when the pressure's dropped off. But the Sheridan works like a pre-charged pneumatic, in that it's got a hammer that you cock which knocks the valve open, like I've shown you here. This is the inlet valve, and that's the exhaust valve, and the hammer would be back here. When shooting into the traps, make sure you're wearing protective glasses and any other protective equipment you may require, because lead can splash out from the traps, and they could, if you're fairly close, they could cause you an injury. This is a brief description of how an image moving scope works. It's got a false tube in the centre of the tube with the crosshairs in, and when you screw down the up and down, it pushes on the top against the spring that's under there and adjusts the scope, thereby keeping your picture exactly the same. This is a standard type of silencer that we've shown a cutaway of it, so that you can see that this end would be threaded onto the barrel, this screws onto the muzzle, and as the pellet or bullet comes through the middle, the gases are allowed to expand in each chamber as the bullet comes through. So by the time the bullet or pellet leaves the muzzle or the end of the silencer, all the supersonic gases are reduced down to low velocity, so that there's hardly any sound. We are now testing the Webley Mark III with Crossman AccuPels. It seems to like these, which is unusual for a British gun to like the smaller pellets. I'll show you what they look like. These are Crossman AccuPels, as you can see, they've all blown to pieces even at 11 foot-pound or below. That's why you have to use the wasp in 5.6mm. The larger the front lens, the more light is allowed to enter the scope and your eye, and also the bigger field of view, which is obviously much better.
It's because you're on camera, Wally. That's what it is.
To get an FAC, you need somewhere to shoot and also a gun cabinet like this. This one has got a top cabinet and a locking door. It has to have a separate lock for the top and the bottom, and to keep the ammunition there's a separate lock inside. The new regulations want a different lock for the top and the bottom so that the same key won't fit both. These are police approved and will take quite a bit of getting into. So you get 3 sets of keys. These are about £130 at this time. The other thing you mustn't have if you want to get an FAC is any convictions, of course, but not just burglary or armed robbery, but of course even drunk driving could eliminate you from getting a firearm certificate. If you want to get an FAC to shoot at a club, you have to belong to a club for at least 6 months to be on probation till everyone is satisfied that you can handle a gun safely, and then you apply for your certificate. But you have to have one of them cabinets that we spoke of earlier. But to get a hunting rifle to shoot rabbits and vermin, you need to have quite a big place to shoot on with quite a few acres. If you have written permission, then you can include that with your application. Your application has to be signed by 2 professional people, like doctors, lawyers, accountants, teachers, anyone of that nature. With CO2, it's a liquid because it liquefies when it's pressurised, and that's why they're sold by the weight of the liquid CO2 and not by the pressure, because while you've got the liquid in there, the pressure should always be the same if it's the right temperature. If this gets cold, the pressure will drop. That's why if you fire a CO2 pistol or rifle quickly, this will cool off and the power will drop. That's why you lose power if you fire a CO2 quickly or in cold weather. Got a gun here which was very popular when I was a lad. A Mark 1 BSA Meteor. These have got a leather piston washer inside. The sights are made of metal, front and back, and they've got these grooves in the stock. These was very good, really. BSA claimed 500 feet per second from the Meteor. You can shoot these pendulums and they disappear up the back like that. And when you want to bring them back again, you just hit the middle one and they come back again. But wear protective glasses to make sure you don't get any injuries. But you can't replace your eyes.
You were to sit, didn't you? No, I told you to sit down slowly. Oh, I see. You want to do a dive?
The actual effective range of the gun is dependent mainly on the shooter and the gun and the ammunition combination, because if you can group them in a small circle at 40 yards, as long as you've got the power, then you should be able to humanely dispatch rats and rabbits. And if you've got 20 odd foot-pound, 20 to 25-ish, we found that in tests at 25 foot-pounds you would still have enough energy at virtually 100 yards to kill rabbits. The main trouble would be that you wouldn't be able to hit them humanely and consistently. With spring piston air guns, I find one of the most important things is correct lubrication. Without the correct lubrication, you can find that the gun will be varying quite a lot. So after initial testing of a new air gun that I've bought, I normally run it in a little bit and then strip it down and degrease it, tune it, even if it's just to re-lubricate it. Don't forget to join the BASC. This is an organisation for shooters and looking after our interests. Here we've got an old Webley Mark I air pistol with a safety catch and wooden grips. And here you can see the Webley sign with the pellet with wings on. It's got a safety catch there. Patent numbers on there. Webley and Scott Limited, Birmingham. Trigger adjuster at the front. We'll just try this out. This is 177 and we'll try it with Crossman match pearl along the top here. It's nearly gone through the third one, but obviously if we put new springs in these guns, the old ones, they would probably perform quite a bit better. This is just to show you that we've got a steel trap behind the chronograph for safety. This also lets us see how much the pellet has flattened up, to show you how a pellet reacts when it hits the steel plate as a guide to power. We'll take these out and try the copper sheets now. Here we're putting the copper sheets in. These are 5 thou thick. Now we've got our sheets of copper placed in the box. We'll try it with wasp. We'll use wasp first because these was the pellets that they would have used years ago. It's gone through 14 sheets and stopped at the 14th sheet there. We'll now do the same test to one side with Crossman AccuPel, the round-headed Crossman. Make sure they're all back in place. This is the Crossman AccuPel round head. just shoot it off to one side. That has gone through one extra sheet. We'll now try the air sporter Mark II. You can tell it's a Mark II because it's got a fold down rear sight like that. The Mark I had a wheel back sight there, similar to a Webley Mark III. And the Mark I also had a two-stage trigger. The Mark II like this has got a single stage trigger. So we'll use Wasp. That is Wasp in a Mark II air sporter. When you cock a 52 original Dyna, you actually pull this back until the rear engages into the free ball bearings at the back that are held locked in there by an outer sleeve. And when you fire the gun, the outer sleeve moves away and allows the balls to fly out and the piston to fire forward. We'll now show you the velocity of the 177 with a round-headed Superdome pellet. .425 feet per second. We can forget the weight because that's for a 2.2. We'll just go by the velocity, 425. For the Premier in 177, Webley used to claim 350 feet per second at 20 feet, was it? Pellets fired at a steel plate actual size. Yeah, and at 20 feet it would show you a flattened pellet. But the velocity they would give for a Premier in 177 is 350, and it would penetrate 11 sheets of Strawboard. .425 again. Put the weight down to 7.5, 8, something like that. 7.9 we put the weight in and see what that comes out at. 3.19 at 426. As you can see, the Webley Senior is quite consistent. This is the Crossman match pel from the Webley, and these are the round nose pellets from the Webley Senior. We've just got room now to try the Webley Senior through the top here. This time we'll use a round nose pellet, Superdome by RWS. We'll be firing across the top here. It's gone through to number 6. As you can see at the first one, they punch a pretty clean hole, and then as they get down the line they tend to tear more as the power drops off. We're trying some different card now. This is slightly thinner, but it might be tougher. But we'll try it with wasp again in the HW50, just to see how many it goes through. It's gone through the same amount. We now try the Mark II air sporter with Ely Wasp 5.6. This will be along the edge along here. It's gone through to 14. I will now try an H&M match along the top in the middle here. This is in the HW50, but these are a flat-headed pellet. Stopped at number 11. Might have just gone through. Yeah, just a slight mark. Very slight mark there by my thumb. So it went through 10. No, so it went through 11. As you can see, it's blasting quite a large hole through this card. We're now going to try an original Dyna model 24. This is doing 536 feet per second with Superdome. I'm going to fire it along this edge here. It's gone through the 8th one sideways, as you can see there, and just parked the ball there. It's pretty good for a little gun. This is what a Superdome looks like at 536 feet per second from the original 24. Pre-charge. Regulated pre-charge are different in the fact that they've got a secondary chamber here. This allows a secondary pressure of 1000 psi, say, which would fill this all to that pressure. And when you fire the gun, the valve is knocked open the same as a conventional pre-charge, and the air would rush out behind the pellet. But with a regulated one, you'd have a main reservoir here with a much higher pressure, and this extra strong spring here would allow in a certain pressure depending on the gun design. So long as this pressure exceeds the secondary reservoir pressure, then the power should be the same with every shot, because you're releasing the same amount of pressure. Whereas on most pre-charge, the valve is just tapped open to the overall main reservoir pressure, which is why you get them climb up as the power, as the gun is fired, the power will go up, level off a little bit, and then gradually start coming down again. Whereas a regulated one with a similar design like this, the power should be the same until it drops below the main reservoir pressure, and then the power will just drop off. I'm now trying an old Air Arms SM100 in 177. This is one I've just brought out of the shop as a matter of interest to see what it does. $7.55. Now we've set up the Terrier marks and zeroed the scope, we'll see how it works. We'll now shoot the Terrier mark. Here we've bought some ping pong balls. These make good targets and they're fairly cheap. We'll lay these out and see how they go. We're placing them in our target safe area. If you put them on water, be careful of ricochets off the water. We'll now try a close-up of how the Terrier marks go when they're hit.
I've been shooting for a while now. Noticed the amount of lead on my fingers. Make sure when you finish shooting to always wash your hands, because lead is an accumulative poison. So give your hands a good scrub afterwards.
We slip the paper clips on a bit of string and then tie a knot there to hold them in position, and then later on we'll clip on some Terrier marks for a little shoot up. Pull it through, tie them on as far apart as you want, and then we'll tie them up between a bit of wood. Here we've bent the paper clip so the Terrier marks will face forward when they're hanging. Now we've set up the Terrier marks and zeroed the scope, we'll see how it works. The comparative data sheet, Airguns, number of straw balls penetrated, 364 thick, placed ½ inch apart and penetrated at 20 feet. For the Webley Mark III in 2.2, they claimed it would do 16 straw balls. That's at 20 feet. The 177 they give the same, 16 straw balls. The 2.2 Mark III is claimed 500 feet per second, whereas for the 177 they've light it up so that you've got more visibility to see what's happening. Right, we've checked the gun, so we're now going to use Ely Wasp in the HW50, which we know is doing 12 foot-pounds. We'll try it in the middle for the first shot. Here we've got an old Webley Mark 1 air pistol with a safety catch and wooden grips. And here you can see the Webley sign with the pellet with wings on. This is a Bisley Magnum, again still in the Mark II air sporter. This is a brief description of how an image moving scope works. We now try it with Wasp in the Mark II air sporter that we used on the previous test. When you cock a 52 original Dyna, you actually pull this back. Just got room now to try the Webley Senior through the... We've now pumped the Sheridan to the full amount of pumps of 8 or 9 pumps till the relief valve goes. And we're going to show you how the pellet flattens at that velocity. That's 589 feet per second. If you get a chance, come and see us at the shop in South Benfleet, 316 High Road. We've got a vast range of air guns, new and used, and also the full range of Simmons scopes, Optimates, Opti2s and Tasco scopes. This is a pack of 6 of the best pellets you can buy, so that you can find the best pellet to match your gun. We've got Crossman AccuPel, Matchpel, PowerPel, Air Arms Field and Air Arms Hunter, and of course the old faithful Ely Wasp in 5.6mm.